every successful person got there by going through tough times. Success is a hard-ass teacher who likes to knock you around along that journey. You know, it takes real guts to not give up and keep going. We'll hear stories about failures and how these leaders flip the script to create success. I'm John Schultz. Join me and let's discover how success is never really overnight. Welcome to the John Schultz podcast. We have a guest today that I am so excited to talk to. I know some of his family members who we love and grew up with in my area. It's a company that is a fascinating company, fascinating career, and his name is Ken Rohl. He's founder and owner of Rohl LLC, but it is known as the House of Rohl, which I love. I love when you put a fun name to a company and it happens to be your name. This business has been, around for a while, but Ken started in the kitchen and bath industry for over 50 years. He founded Rohl LLC in 1983 at 50. So everyone out there that doesn't think they can be an entrepreneur their whole life, they're wrong. They are completely wrong. It's Decker Plumbing Company. It's known for the first pull-out kitchen faucet offered in North America. Ken eventually sold his company to a Fortune brand, Fortune 500 company. Ken has also co-authored the Corporatepreneur Plan, using his business savvy from when he was a corporate person to being an entrepreneur, and a roadmap we're going to talk about. And what I love this one. In 2008, he was inducted into the National Kitchen and Bath Association Hall of Fame. Thank God we have people that focus on that. I know we use our bathrooms a lot, and we need someone focused on it. So welcome, Ken, and thank you so much for being here.
John, thank you for the opportunity to be with you and your audience. I look forward to the next hour.
Terrific. So, it's the myth of overnight success, and you've had a bunch of it. And it's a long career and still going. But, I'd love to start with the early years. Like, how did your upbringing or family background contribute to this entrepreneurial spirit? What were your interests as a kid? And how did you start out early?
Okay. We're East Coast transplants or Midwesterners transplanted to California. But I grew up in the Chicago area, south side of Chicago. And very much an Irish community, Catholic upbringing. Parents were upper middle class. My dad was in the steel industry, mother a housewife after a period of time working for AT&T. I'm born in 1935, so right in the middle of the Depression. Early memories, probably first grade. Sitting at a gas station with my dad while mother was at church, and President Roosevelt came on to announce that we were starting the conflict with the Japanese, that Pearl Harbor had been bombed. And that, of course, changed everybody's life. We had been experiencing the effects of the Depression up until 41. Now we started to shift our focus to international conflict between the Germans and the Japanese and the U.S., and everybody knows the story of World War II. We spent, as a family, the early years, again, in the Chicago area, but in about I guess it was probably 1948, 49, my dad was transferred from Chicago to Pittsburgh. So in sixth grade, I moved from Chicago to the south side of Pittsburgh, an area called Mount Lebanon, PA. And that was probably when I really began to develop some of my, let's say, personality traits that led to a more entrepreneurial career. Being a 6 foot, well, I suppose in sixth grade, I was about 5'8" and 130 or 40 pounds, but I was tall enough and big enough that the pastor of the church came into my class the second day of being in school and grabbed me by the collar and said, "You're going to be on my football team." And football was a big deal, obviously, in Western Pennsylvania and particularly on the East Coast in those days. So I began a career in athletics in grade school and continued through high school with interest in sports in general. But I think the competitive spirit of sports played a big part in honing the skills that were important in my business career. Again, I can't put enough emphasis on the importance of my parents and the influence that they had on me. My mother, at an early age, introduced me to the little train that could. I think I can, I think I can. And so that mantra was a very important part of my early upbringing. Very positive thinking, very goal-oriented, very task-oriented, and sports, again, honing those skills. Probably as I completed the grade school experience, I moved into middle school and high school in the Pittsburgh area. Started to probably develop some entrepreneurial interests with a work ethic, again, encouraged by my mother. Early 14 years of age, working in a pharmacy, beer distributor. And when I was 16 years old, I went into the first experience I had in the steel industry, working for a company in Bridgeview, Pennsylvania, Flannery Manufacturing. I can remember I was hired at age 16 to clean washrooms. And so my summer of my 18th year, I was at Homestead Works as a metallurgical engineer working on the open hearth. The following summer, Duquesne Works. And by this time, I'm finishing my high school career and momentarily thought about immediately going into business because I had, again, that entrepreneurial streak. Happily, I had a vice principal at Mount Lebanon High School who collaborated with my mother to impress upon me the importance of a degree. And because of my football connections, I was invited to a school in Ohio, a liberal arts college by the name of Denison University. And I was admitted to Denison in the fall of 1953, and I spent the next 4 years at Denison. And it was during those years at Denison that I started my first business, which I called Collegiate Sportswear. And that was a business that provided fraternity and sorority sweatshirts to my classmates. And I realized after several months of success that there was a certain limit to how much commission I could make selling to sweatshirts on that campus. And within 50 miles of the Denison campus, there were 5 other small universities. So I immediately set up some representatives on the other campuses, developed the business over the next couple of years. So by the time I graduated from Denison University, I had a pretty thriving business. I think my income in 1957 was $8,000, which I'm told it's equivalent to about a $70,000 income.
Yeah, no, I have a question for you because it's very interesting. You went through the Great Depression, the wars. Our generation really's not been through a lot till the pandemic. Like I have a whole nother perspective of what taking for granted things mean. It just, we never really had a crazy events. Do you feel that was a spark that you didn't realize, that you always felt like I have to do it on my own? Like you never know what's going to be taken away. Do you feel that was a big impact, being that, I don't know if you were too young to feel that. Do you feel that has anything to do with what you became today?
Whether it was the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, I mean, each step along the way, my first realization to how precious life was 19, gosh, I think it was like 1950, John.
Yep.
I was working at a summer camp in West Virginia, and two of the counselors that were directing us were in the Marine Reserve. And they were called up in July of 1950. And by the summer of 51, maybe 52, they had both lost their lives in Korea.
Oh, God.
That's a pretty sobering experience to know that a couple of fellows that you're just a couple of years older than you at that point in your life had been snuffed out very quickly because of a conflict. So that was pretty poignant. I don't think by the time I got into the 60s, the Vietnam War had much of an impact on me personally, because by that time I'm developing my own family. I'm too old for the conflict. And I was blessed, as were my sons, that it seemed like we were just born at a time when we avoided these conflicts. 10 years, I mean, it's interesting. Today on the news, I'm listening to a fellow that's 98 years old celebrating his memory of the Battle of the Bulge in World War II. And there's a 10-year difference between that gentleman and myself, and what a decade of life can mean in terms of the way life can impact on you.
Oh, 100%. So, it's what we take for granted. Sometimes you just got to be grateful and understand anything could be. And listen, that's what makes the entrepreneurial life fun, because you have to be very happy living with uncertainty all the time, right? You never really know. And you just got to have belief that what you're doing means something. I love this sweatshirt business. I actually didn't make it as big as yours, but I did sweatshirts as well in college. I don't know if you're like the third person I've heard that from recently. I don't know why that's coming up in my life all of a sudden, but I guess I'm around a lot of entrepreneurs, but that's funny. And then, all right, so you were in college.
Yeah, I think this next decade is pretty important. I was hired by U.S. Steel in 1957 and admitted to an executive training program, which was a very prestigious opportunity for any young guy. There were 6 of us in that class. And it was the beginning of my corporate career, which lasted for 25 years. But that first 10 years, from 1957 to 67, I was groomed by U.S. Steel, and my mentors during that period were all World War II officers. So we had a very militaristic kind of lifestyle, a very transactional experience for any young person. And joining a corporation in those days, you realized that it was all about the corporation and not the individual, which didn't really set well with me, because again, I think my competitive spirit wanted to somehow or another make a difference in my success along the way. But anyway, with U.S. Steel, 13 months of formal training, very important. And the point I'd like to make to the audience right now is that I'm a big believer in any young person coming out of college spending a period of time being mentored by a corporation that has a development program of some sort, where you can, by taking various steps and shares along the way, develop a lot of skills on somebody else's dollar. And my success is totally based on what the lessons I learned in corporate America. So first 10 years, formal training and exposure to customer service. Can't emphasize enough the importance of every young person having some experience in a customer service department, where you early on start to experience making promises and keeping promises. And in the case of US Steel, I was handling multi-million-dollar accounts at the age of 22, 23. And I'm in my book, I talk about how the head of the customer service department on my second day, I confronted him and I said, this is an awful lot of responsibility taking care of Ford Motor and Borg Warner and major accounts. You really think a rookie like myself should be doing it? And he looked at me and he said, Rohl, you'll either sink or swim. Get back to the desk. And obviously I chose to swim.
There you go.
So anyway, leaving that customer service position, I moved into a sales position in St. Louis, spent 4 years in St. Louis, started a family, had the experience of multiple customers, multiple products, working for a company like US Steel. You were exposed to a whole host of different companies, everything from pet milk to distribution companies to structural fabricators. Got involved with the building of the St. Louis Arch, which is the gateway to the West.
Yeah.
After 4 years of sales, I was tapped for a startup operation in Birmingham, Alabama. Here I am again, maybe 27, 28 years old. I'm being sent to the South, to a wholly different culture. It's a startup, a hole in the ground. I've got $50 million, 3 years to build a factory. I mean, can you imagine that kind of responsibility for anybody other than somebody in corporate America? And anyway, 2 years later, we had that factory up and going. And I was.
A question about that. What you said, I think one of your points is so important. We don't all have to be in sales, but I think if you don't spend any time in it and you're involved in any product, you really can't understand how a customer thinks. I mean, obviously we're all customers. If you can't present yourself properly or learn what that means and how to engage with people, and the problem I'm having with today is since COVID, people aren't engaging the same way. I know we have all these tools in the e-commerce and the internet and everything that we're doing to show our products, but how important do you think that sales background helped you throughout your career?
John, I don't think you can emphasize enough the importance of having some sales experience if you're going to end up in a leadership position. I mean, I'd say, generally speaking, most leaders are extroverts. Most leaders, at best, are ambiverts, a little bit of left and right brain development. But there's nothing that I think takes the place of being in the trenches, being challenged to come up with solutions for a customer, learning to listen. I mean, one of the axioms, one of the fundamentals of any sales experience is listen to the customer, find out what they want, and then just give it to them, get the order, and get out of town.
No, it's true. I mean, like from Bezos, customers set. I mean, Mark Cuban. You look at any one of these people that are in product businesses, and they're the first to tell you that you're building it for your customer, not for yourself, not for your own ego. So all right. So you built this factory at a very young age.
Yeah.
Then what happened from there?
Well, then I'm transferred to Pittsburgh, and I moved into a pretty high level position as a product manager with national responsibilities. And so at that point, I'm not just regionally focused, I'm nationally focused. I'm on the West Coast, I'm in the South, all over the country, promoting a product line of sheet steel, for pipes and things related to steel sheet production. And this is 1967. Jack Kennedy becomes president of the United States. All of a sudden, there's a lot of focus on the environment. The steel industry is identified as a significant pollutant of the air, particularly in places like Pittsburgh and Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And the government decides to put restrictions on the steel industry that basically increases the cost of environmental protection into the billions of dollars, and resources that the industry would have used for research and development and marketing are now diverted to the environment and cleansers for these steel mills that are major pollutants. And all of a sudden, we're displacing hundreds of thousands of workers. And it's pretty clear that the steel industry isn't going to be a real healthy career path for somebody like myself. And fortunately, I had made an acquaintance with a company in Chicago in my sheet steel experience in down south, that were looking for a director of marketing for a new product development in an area where I was skilled. And I was presented with an opportunity to leave U.S. Steel and join a company in Chicago called DeSoto Chemical. So that's the first corporate move that I make. And it takes me from a U.S. focused product line to a product line and a company that has both national and international interest. I spent 2 years with that startup. It's successful. The company decides to integrate my product line into their commodity lines. The chairman of the board comes to me and says, out of one job, but we've got another one for you in another division. And so I was introduced to my first residential product experience, which was wallpaper. So I was assigned to a company that had just lost some money. They were floundering. The board decided that they needed some fresh ideas and thoughts for this business. And I was quarterbacked in the position of turning that company around. And so United Wall Covering became an experience for me that I think played a big role in my future in the kitchen and bath industry and residential products.
So let me ask you a question, right? Because you're an entrepreneur in theory your whole life. Like, what made you keep going from job to job? I mean, I know it's a good thing. I'm not condemned, but like, what I'm trying to understand is how you go so long being an entrepreneur to then when you in '83 starting Rohl. Like,
all right, I think again, relationships, mentoring plays a big role in all of our careers. So I had in my corporate years mentors who saw something in me that was worth developing, and I was smart enough to listen and learn. I had relationships that I developed that led from one career opportunity to another. And there's an element of luck, timing. I mean, literally being out of a job with United Wall Covering because we had been too successful and the division sold off, and having a supplier in my office telling me that a classmate of his is looking for a VP of sales and marketing. I mean, how do you predict something like that?
well, you don't, but but you never can. I think happenstance plays a role in all of our lives if we allow it. But you also took the initiative to go check it out. Because you just seem like you're a person, you're never afraid to try and learn. Like, you're not afraid of the new, which is obviously how you became this entrepreneur later in life. And you weren't afraid to change. And, you were also not afraid of the unknown. I mean, it didn't matter what state, what area, what thing it was. I mean, these are all sort of similar but different. It's not like they're the same type of product. So,
and all of us, I'm sure, uh, and it's interesting. In my book, I use the hot air balloon as a metaphor for being entrepreneurial, and we can maybe get to that. We'll touch on
We
that.
are. I mean, I'm picturing it because we're all just floating around, and hopefully we're in the right direction if we like move the rudders a little bit, but we're not in control. So I don't know if that's what it means, but that's what when I see that on your book, I feel that. All right, so yeah,
So the point, though, Johnny, is that yes, you have to have a tolerance for risk.
totally.
There's something about our personalities that welcome challenges and see that if we're going to make anything happen, it's up to us. And
Well,
so,
I feel better being an underdog. Like my favorite movies are Rudy, Rocky. I actually had Rudy on, the real Rudy, on one of my podcasts. It was amazing. I feel more settled in that space. It's pretty interesting. That's me. I think a lot of entrepreneurs do. That's why at a certain point, you know, a new CEO comes in and they're on to the next, you know, feeling unsettled thing, right? So you're at the end of this corporate gig, right? And then how did Rohl form? Like, what was that one moment that you decided I'm doing this, and it's me doing this with your team, your family?
okay. The fourth leg of the corporate experience is a company called LK Manufacturing out of Chicago.
Yep.
So I leave St. Charles through, again, relationships, and I'm brought into LK Manufacturing as a senior vice president of sales and marketing, replacing an iconic figure who had been with their company since its founding in 1935. With that position, I'm exposed again, and even a greater extent, to the international world. And I'm with LK in 1979. By 1981, I have learned quite a bit about the plumbing industry. I've learned about distribution. And now there's an invitation to go to Frankfurt, Germany, to participate in an international trade fair. So I decide that we're going to take LK US made products to Western Europe and use this trade show as a launching pad for exposing LK products, not only to the Western European market, to the Middle Eastern market. So I set up a trade show booth in this German environment. Nobody on my team speaks any German other than the little German that I might have learned in my home with my grandparents from Aurora, Illinois. But anyway, it's this risk thing, you know, hey, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So let's go to Frankfurt, Germany and expose LK products to the international market. And so we set up a trade show booth. I think this first night I'm there, I meet a gal at the bar who speaks fluent German and English. And I hire her to come into our trade show booth and to be kind of a draw and to cover the language issue. And so we have a very successful couple of days. And I think it was the second or third day, I'm in the booth and this gentleman walks in and introduces himself as the son of the founder and chairman of a company called KWC, which is a faucet manufacturer from the country of Switzerland, RO Switzerland. And he says, I've got a product that I think your company might be interested in, and it's called a pull-out kitchen faucet. Well, in 1981, nobody in America had ever heard of or seen a pull-out kitchen faucet. Hard to believe that today it's ubiquitous. Just about everybody now has one in their home, but this is 40 years later. But in 1981, it's a very unique product. It's a luxury product. It's the Bentley of faucets. But I'm intrigued enough when this gentleman suggests a partnership that I say, well, come on back to Chicago. And I'll introduce you to the owner of my company, and maybe we can put together a partnership. So in the spring of 81, KWC comes to Chicago. We meet with the owner of my company. He picks up this faucet, looks at me, and says, "Ken, this will make a great anchor on my boat. And nobody will pay $250 for a kitchen faucet." So I did my mea culpas with the gentleman from Switzerland, invited him out to lunch. And at lunch, I said, I think you and I should stay in touch because there is some there with that product. And although it's been rejected by LK, maybe there's something that we can develop. Well, thus began the beginning of my entrepreneurial career, because over the next few months, I envisioned how I could use this pull-out kitchen faucet as my link to an entrepreneurial venture. And I was at a point in my corporate career, now 48 years of age, where I had done all that I was going to do. And if I was going to really make anything happen from that point on, it was going to be on my own, as we used to say, nickels. I guess now it would be. So
You and Croc from McDonald's. I mean, like I love it. Like it's such a cool story because it is similar. Different but similar.
Different, and we're both actually from the South. We're both starting from a base in Chicago. But anyway, I stayed in touch with KWC through the latter part of 81, and literally by the end of 81, I'm pretty clear that my career at LK is just not shaping up, and I negotiate with the owner of the company an exit from LK because I'm on contract with them. And so they have an obligation to me, I have an obligation to them. And I said, look, why don't I become your VP of sales for the West Coast, because I'd like to go to California and plant my flag there for whatever I'm going to do with the rest of my career. And I had looked at both the East Coast and the West Coast as a launching pad for this business that I was contemplating. And in those days, California was the mecca for startups.
Yeah.
And it was just.
It still really is. I mean, it's a major ecosystem.
It is, no doubt about it. So anyway, I moved to Southern California in late 81, early 82. And in 82, I start to develop the KWC relationship with dealers in the California market. And I'm enjoying some success, much so that I engaged my son, Lou, who at this point has graduated from a school in Illinois, part of the University of Illinois system. And he had worked for me in the summer of his junior year at a distributor in Frankfurt, Germany. So he had picked up the German language, the German culture. I'm now affiliated with a German-speaking Swiss company, and I need a Trojan horse to represent me at the factory. And so Lou becomes my Trojan horse and agrees to move to Switzerland and work in the export department of this company that I'm now partnering with. And in 82, that relationship develops. By the end of 82, I've opened an office in Southern California. I have met my now wife at a trade show. She has come on as an employee along with her daughter. Lou comes back well, actually, before Lou comes back from Switzerland, there's a very pivotal moment where my relationship in early 83, or is it 82? 82. Early 82, with KWC as being tenuous because in 82, the owner of KWC is replaced by the board of directors with a professional CEO. And the CEO decides that maybe one of the problems with the company's earnings has to do with their international distribution, and it might need revamping. And I'm about 5 months into my relationship with them, and I get a call from Lou saying that maybe my relationship is in jeopardy. So here again is that moment where you decide, what are you going to do to preserve this relationship? And my decision is I'm going to get on a plane and fly to Zurich, Switzerland. And I'm going to go into a board of directors meeting Monday morning, and I'm going to tell my story and why they want to continue their engagement with me instead of coming up with an alternative. The only prop that I take into that board meeting, because half the audience speaks no English and the other have absolutely no understanding of the US market, is a map of the United States. And here again is the importance of knowing your market and having credentials in all parts of the market. I think any startup that wants to have a national footprint has to have an owner, a leader that really understands the cultures of our country. What better way to present the cultures of our country, to put the map of the country in front of an audience and then walk across the country talking about the time zone changes, talking about the cultural changes from south to north, east to west, talking about the importance of knowing the customers, the marketplace, all the vagaries and challenges of dealing in a multifaceted cultural country with different time zones. And literally, after about a 40-minute presentation, I look at this group and I say, I'm going to go out and sit in the vestibule for 30 minutes. I got a plane back to Chicago. I want an answer one way or the other before I leave. Happily, they walked out 15 minutes later with a contract. We signed that contract and thus began a 16-year career with KWC as their US partner. Now, that's the first hurdle that any entrepreneur is going to run into in that first 12, 18, 24 months of a startup, and why so many businesses fail. I mean, I'm sure you know, John, the statistics on startup failures. And there's two things that I point out in the book. One, the percentage of failures of companies that are started by people in their 30s versus people in their late 40s or 50s. And clearly, the chances of success are much greater if you've got 10 or 15 years of experience on somebody else's dollar before you start your own business than just coming up with a product idea and thinking that you're going to, because of the dynamics of this innovative idea of yours, you're going to succeed. And in the book, I do point out that any business is like a stool that's got three legs. You've got to understand sales, you've got to understand marketing, and you've got to understand finance. And so that, I think,
100%. Or you got to be smart enough to bring in people as a partner and get along that will, help you with your blind spots. But because if you are young, you better have the right set of people, those legs set up. Fortunate for you, you experience them all. There's nothing better than experience, but not everybody wants to wait as long as you. And they,
And then the key is to read the book and realize the importance of knowing, to your point, your strengths and your weaknesses.
Yes.
And the smartest thing you can do as a leader is to fortify your business with people that make up for your weaknesses, because we don't all have an understanding of sales, marketing, and finance. My weakness was finance. I didn't have an in-depth understanding of anything other than profits and revenue. And I certainly had a great appreciation for cash flow. And so I understood the fundamentals of finance, but all the details, all of the back office stuff that is so important to your success was going to be delegated to somebody who had skills in that area that made up for my deficiencies. And that's I think the key to anybody's success is, again, to our point, know your strengths, know your weaknesses.
Well, look at them all. Jobs, Wozniak. I mean, everyone had someone that was levering them up, no matter what company, and multiple people, candidly, depending on the company. There's always the front person, but that's just one person that you see, and there's a lot behind that. All right, so you have Rohl. I love that you created something that I don't know how you could have a faucet without pulling it out and like doing like it's crazy. I can't believe that wasn't like a thing even long before that. But you saw it,
And my boss saw it as an anchor on his boat. So
well, that's what I love it. But like I always say to people, like I'll be looking down the street, you'll be looking down the street, and we will see two entirely different things. It's what you want to have your eyes and mind opened up to is what you see in the world, right? So that's why being grateful and having a good attitude, you're going to see grateful and good things out there. If you want to, be a Burgermeister Meisterburger, if you go back to that Christmas show, you're going to not see anything except what you want to see. That usually is a very shallow look. But you have Rohl. It's rolling. Love that.
yeah.
It's a good metaphor for your company. What were some of the things that you're able to scale that? Was it, I mean, your corporate, obviously, background, you saw how to scale things, but, it's a newer world, different ways to market than in the past. So how did that flow?
Okay, I think it's very important to take business growth one bite at a time. So the key, I think, to our success was that I planted the flag in the western part of the U.S., in California, huge market, but realized that initially I only had so much time and so many resources, and I had to deploy them as intelligently as I possibly could. And let's develop our backyard first. So instead of jumping across the country and trying to be all things to all people, I think any startup should look at their local market first and build credibility in your local market before you try to take on other markets. So in our case, we just simply said in the first 2 or 3 years of our startup, we're going to focus on the 13 Western states. We're going to focus on our time zone. And it wasn't really until 3 or 4 years later that my son, Mark, your friend,
Yep.
who had joined Marriott Corporation, came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, I think I'd like to get." My story is, he said, "I'd like to get on the train before it pulls out of the station." And I said, "Hey, we've got an opportunity for you. Come on into California, into our business, go through some training. And then because you've got the short straw in the family, you're going to the East Coast."
I don't like that. I think it's the big straw. That's where I am.
Okay, well, it turned out that he had the big straw because obviously as the company grew and as we developed a national footprint, our offices in New Jersey and the East Coast introduced us to some major players in our industry. I have a business with KWC that starts in 1983. By 1996, we've had 15, 16 years of success. We have a brand that's established. We've put all of the emphasis behind building the KWC brand. And the CEO of the company calls me in October of 96 and says, "We're not going to renew your contract. We've decided that you've done such a great job of bringing our product to market that we're going to do it ourselves. We're going to take over the distribution." So I think I was in Boston at the time, and my wife called and said I had received this fax basically terminating our contract and ending our business. because at this point I've got a 13, $14 million business. 90% of it is KWC. And through a friend of Mark, who is an attorney, I had scenarioed in the summer of 96 what I would do if I were to lose this contract. And now I'm facing the loss of the contract. But happily, instinctively, I had done some homework. And so I called from Boston, Mark in New Jersey, and said, set up an appointment with our attorney friend. So by 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, I'm in the Newark offices of an attorney, and we're talking about how we're going to take this Swiss company to court. And there is a franchise law that particularly is very strong in New Jersey. We have the same one in California, but the New Jersey law was even tougher when it came to distribution agreements. And we had a tax base in New Jersey giving us the ability to bring I was able to extricate myself from that relationship. In January of 97, we shipped all of the inventory to KWC's new headquarters in Atlanta. I had an out-of-court settlement for enough $1 million that I literally had the opportunity to think about retirement. But after about a 10-minute discussion with family, we started the business, I think, with a $2 million platform in 97. And that began the next chapter in the development of the House of Rohl and the Rohl brand as opposed to the KWC brand. And by early 97, we had, I think, gone to a trade show in Germany again, and we were starting to develop relationships with other manufacturers in Europe. And as we finished the 90s, our little $2 million restart, which I had to downsize, and again, this is one of the tough parts of any entrepreneur's adventure is that we're going to have some major shifts in our success. There'll be things like the pandemic that will suddenly change the landscape and have dramatic effect on revenues and profits. How do you adapt to it? Well, you diversify, you get the creative. You look at your strengths? Our strengths were distribution relationships, customer relationships, supplier relationships, reputation. And so by the early 2000s, we have restarted the company under the name Rohl LLC, which eventually becomes the House of Rohl. We developed a relationship with an Italian company that manufactures bathroom product and also kitchen product. We just established a relationship with a company out of London, England, that manufactures an English-style faucet. We established a relationship with a sink manufacturer in France called Alia. They introduced us to fire clay kitchen sinks. Anyway, we start building product diversity instead of product dependency. So instead of a one show act or one product act, we're a multiple product act, trading on our reputation, trading on our distribution relationships, trading on our knowledge of manufacturing. And thus begins a march towards a $75, $80 million company by 2016. And I think, John, the other thing that's important in any of our career successes is two things. And it kind of goes back to your initial question in this part of our interview, was what are the other things? What are the tangential things that influence your success? Trade show activity, very important. But more important is association, industry association activity. I built a persona in the kitchen and bath industry, which obviously eventually led to my Hall of Fame designation. But more importantly, I got to know my competitors. I got to know other product manufacturers, other distribution type businesses. I did what I called building the pie rather than trying to steal a bigger share of an existing size pie. My philosophy was expand the pie for the industry, build through innovation and new product introductions and new cultural approaches, the size of your industry. So I take some pride in the fact that maybe I was partially responsible for the growth of the kitchen and bath industry and the luxury segment of an industry that going back to 1983 didn't exist.
No, you were. So you should be proud of that. I'm proud of your whole family because, like, the way everyone's structured it, where everyone could have their purpose, their meaning, their ability to shine, their role. No, again, no pun intended, is such a wonderful thing. And look what it's created. Besides a great family, it's created a great industry and a great product that's going to keep continuing to grow. And I love it. The book, Corporate Tenor, what a cool name. Everyone should read this book. All these lessons that we discussed today just show you, you never know. You just got to be open enough and have relations and, good relationships to be able to ask questions. And when you're down, you have someone to talk to keep you moving forward. And you've had that because you've allowed that to be in your life. So,
well, Jeff, I want to inject here too that Greg Rohl is the reason why we're together today, because it was Greg 2.5 years ago who introduced me to his startup, which eventually morphed into a partnership with his brother Lou in a consulting and mentoring and teaching business. But he calls his company the Rohl model. And I thought when he introduced me to the Rohl model, what a cool idea. And what generated the idea of naming your company the Rohl model, and thus began the beginning of this book experience, because he said, well, I just looked at our 25, 30 years of exposure to you and all the lessons we learned along the way. And all I'm doing is taking those lessons and turning it into a new consulting business. And I said, well, hey, why don't I chronicle the path towards this decision of yours? And so I then sat down and wrote 64 pages of handwritten history, which much of which we've gone over the last hour or so. And
well, it's nice. You'll have this for your family for generations to come, and a lot of great lessons. And so where can people find the book?
Well, the book is available through Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Kindle. We just recently commissioned a audible. What do you call it? Audible.
Audible. Yeah, Audible.
So we have a male, female that read the book, and I think that's probably going to be a very popular way for people to access the story.
Yeah, I love Audible. I listen to books more than read, so I love that medium. It's a terrific way to learn. Well, I want to thank you so much for doing this. I just so enjoy these amazing stories. Is there anything you'd like to end with?
Well, I just think the key, again, to any of our success is continue to teach what you need to learn. And so I think all entrepreneurs, all corporatepreneurs should try to diversify and share their lessons learned. And one of the things that I've enjoyed most in these last 7, 8 years of retirement has been sharing what I've learned along the way, what is in the book, but more importantly, I think our game is really never finished. And what a terrific reward it is to be able to share your experiences and your lessons with others. And whether it's our local theater, where I've been chairman of the board of the Barclay Theater and helped to overcome some challenges during the pandemic that the theater arts world was.
Oh yeah, it was tough. Yep.
And my experience with UCI, the University of California, Irvine, the Graduate School of Business, being a trustee. I mean, there's just so many ways that we can continue to be productive and useful.
And helpful. That's why we're here. I always feel best when I'm helping someone. So it's a good thing.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. Again, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, going to be on Audible soon. The Corporate Tenor. Please go out and get a copy. It's great to give a gift out, right, for people within your company or just, anyone who wants to learn how to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So thank you. Hi, John Schultz here. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. Would really appreciate it if you would like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. Looking forward to being with you soon.